Welcome to episode 3 of the Economic Hitman. These hitmen are professionals whose job is economic entrapment. They are highly paid to trap nations into massive debt, making them bend to U.S. political and economic priorities. In episode 2, we broke down the playbook of the economic hitman: debt, inflated loans, corporate profits, dollar supremacy, and political leverage that breeds dependency. One does wonder who makes the playbook work, who pulls the strings behind the loans, the deals, and the coups. The truth is, power doesn't wear a flag or uniform. It hides in boardrooms, in banks, and in files stamped top secret. These are the secret hands shaping global power. Greetings, I'm Dr. Christy Agawo. Welcome back to our series on aid, power, and the hidden architecture of global economics. Today, we turn from the playbook to the players themselves, the corporations, the banks, the covert actors who keep the system running. Subscribe and stay with us as we pull back the dark curtains on global power to reveal the sinister forces at work. So, first, the corporations. Perkins makes clear he wasn't operating in isolation. U.S. construction and engineering giants Bechtel, Halliburton, Brown and Root were waiting in the wings. The pattern was simple. The loan was approved. U.S. corporations got the contracts, and the so-called development projects, dams, highways, and oil pipelines guaranteed that profits flowed back to corporate America. In the words of Perkins, the money actually never left Washington. It went from banks in the U.S. to corporations in the U.S., while the country, the third world country, on paper carried the debt. This meant that foreign leaders could cut ribbons on shiny projects, but the real wealth looped back to multinational companies. Second, the banks and financial institutions. They were in on this thick. Perkins writes that the IMF and the World Bank became the architects of dependency. Their loans came with strict conditions: privatize your industries, slash social spending, open your markets. He argues these weren't just misguided policies. They were part of a deliberate system, a system meant not to free nations, but to bind them, not to lift people out of poverty, but to open economies for foreign corporations and force obedience. As Perkins put it, the loans were never intended to help the countries receiving them, but to enrich corporations and guarantee control. Now you know. Wall Street commercial banks piled on, flooding nations with dollar-denominated loans that pushed them ever deeper into the red. And as Perkins explains, the dollar status as the world's reserve currency meant repayment always reinforced demand for the greenback, keeping countries trapped in the system and dependent on Washington's financial power. Debt wasn't just an economic issue, it was geopolitical leverage designed to keep nations compliant, attached to the purse strings of others. Corporations, they were the face of respectability. Banks look even purer, buried under mountains of cross-checked paperwork. On the surface, everything is public, open, accessible. But when persuasion fails, the job of the economic hitman to win compliance isn't enough. If a government still refuses, that's when the jackals move in. Perkins describes a shadowy second-tier CIA operatives and U.S. government contractors, the jackals, sent to topple or intimidate leaders who resisted the system. The IMF and the World Bank create leverage with loans and conditions, but when economic pressure isn't enough, it's the government-backed jackals who move in. History provides plenty of examples where soft power turned hard. Leaders who challenged Western interests often met violent ends. Take Iran. Mohammad Mossadegh, overthrown for nationalizing oil and challenging British and U.S. interests. Then there is Jacobo Arends in Guatemala. A CIA-backed coup removed him from land reforms and socialist-leaning policies that were threatening U.S. economic interests. In the Congo, Patrice Lumumba, assassinated with CIA involvement for resisting neocolonial influence and asserting control over resources. João Goulart of Brazil, he was overthrown for labor reforms and perceived leftist alignment during the Cold War. Salvador Allende, Chile, killed in a US-supported military coup for pursuing socialist reforms and nationalization. Isabel Perón of Argentina, the elected government was overthrown in a military coup with US backing. The new junta carried out widespread repression against leftist opposition during the Dirty War. The Contras in Nicaragua, US-backed insurgency against the Sandinista government, which had overthrown the Somoza dictatorship and implemented socialist reforms. The support escalated civil conflict to roll back leftist influence in the region. Then there's Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, briefly ousted in a coup with alleged US backing due to opposition to Western economic and political interests. Our own Kwame Nkrumah, the first leader of an independent sub-Saharan African country under colonial rule, he dared to defy the system. He pursued Pan-African unity, industrialization, and economic independence. His vision threatened the global empire's control, and in 1966, while he was abroad, a CIA-supported coup removed him from power. Soft power turned hard. When death traps didn't work, coups and assassinations did. Together, these forces, the corporations, the banks, and covert operations, created what Perkins describes as the world's first truly global empire, an empire invisible to most, without borders or uniforms, but wielding the power to decide the fate of entire nations. It's an empire that hides behind words like development, aid, but its real mission has always been the same: extract wealth, enforce compliance, and maintain control. It was cloaked in the language of development and aid, but its real mission was extraction and control. So, a new dam, a new loan, a new deal, they may glitter like progress, but behind them lies a system of hidden hands, tightening chains of dependency. But not everyone bowed. Some leaders resisted. If you've been pulled into the story, hit subscribe. Share this episode and turn on notifications, because in the next episode, we'll turn the camera back to the United States and uncover the US dividend. Keep sharing until the next time.